In early 423 BC, Xerxes II inherited what was arguably the most powerful throne on earth. He was the legitimate heir to the vast Persian Achaemenid Empire, a kingdom that stretched from India to Greece. His word was law for millions. Yet just 45 days later, he was murdered in his own bed, the victim of a family conspiracy. How does that happen? How can the rightful king of what was likely the largest empire the world had yet seen be erased from history so quickly? The answer isn't just a simple story of betrayal. It's much deeper. The assassination of Xerxes II exposes a fatal flaw at the very heart of the Persian Empire, a succession system so chaotic, so dependent on violence and backroom deals, that it was practically an invitation for disaster. This wasn't a one-off, it was a symptom of a sickness that ran deep in the dynasty. The story of this forgotten king is more than a historical footnote. It's a perfect window into the systemic failures and brutal power grabs that defined the empire's most vulnerable moments. To understand why the mighty Achaemenid Empire was so prone to self-destruction, we first have to unravel the mystery of the king who barely reigned. How are you, friends? I am Czar. Friends, before the chaos, there was an illusion of order. By the mid-5th century BC, the Achaemenid Empire was an entity of almost unimaginable scale, what many historians consider the world's first true superpower. Forged by the conquests of Cyrus the Great and organized by the administrative genius of Darius the Great, its territory spanned 3 continents. It held dozens of different peoples, languages, and cultures under the authority of a single ruler, the Shahanshah, the King of Kings. This King of Kings was more than just a monarch. He was the absolute center of the Persian universe, a figure of immense, almost divine authority. From his grand palaces in Susa and Persepolis, he ruled a complex network of provinces called satrapies. Each was run by a governor or satrap who answered directly to him. This structure was a marvel of ancient administration, allowing one man to govern a vast and diverse territory. The famous royal road connected the empire, allowing for quick communication and deployment of armies, while a standardized system of weights and coinage brought enormous wealth into the imperial treasury. The reign of Artaxerxes I, our tragic king's father, seemed to be the very picture of this stability. Ruling for over 4 decades, from 465 to late 425 or early 424 BC, he oversaw a period of relative peace. After the huge wars with Greece that defined his father Xerxes I's reign, Artaxerxes I preferred a different approach. His strategy is often seen as skillfully playing Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta against each other, using diplomacy and well-placed bribes to weaken them from afar while saving Persian strength. He also continued the work of his predecessors, adding to the magnificent complex at Persepolis and rebuilding palaces at Susa. To any outsider, the empire looked strong and secure. Artaxerxes I had put down major revolts, including a dangerous one in Egypt, and by all appearances, he was a capable ruler. But under all that gold and stability, something was rotting. The very source of the king's power, his family, was also the greatest threat. The heart of this problem was in the royal household, an institution known to history by one evocative word, the harem. And it was here in the secluded, gilded quarters of the palace that the seeds of civil war were being sown. So respected friends, why was the Persian succession process such a mess? The simplest answer is, there wasn't a formal, unbreakable plan. There was no strict law that said the eldest son automatically got the throne. While a king would usually name an heir, this choice could always be challenged, especially after he died. The Persian monarchy was a family business, and at the center of that business was the harem. This wasn't some fantasy land. It was a ruthless political arena. Achaemenid kings were polygynous, meaning they had many wives and concubines. This served a few purposes. Marriages could seal alliances with powerful nobles, and a large number of children was a sign of a king's power and a guarantee the royal line would continue. But it came with a huge hidden cost: Artaxerxes. I had only one legitimate son with his main wife, Queen Damaspia, Xerxes II. However, according to the Greek historian Ctesias, whose accounts are often our main, if sometimes gossipy, source for these events, Artaxerxes also had as many as 17 illegitimate sons with his other partners. Suddenly, the The throne isn't an inheritance, it's a grand prize. Nearly 24 half-brothers were now potential competitors. Each of these sons was raised in the cutthroat environment of the harem, where their mothers, all of different statuses, were constantly scheming for influence. Think of it as the most high-stakes political game you've ever seen, where losing could mean you and your children disappear. This created a hotbed of paranoia, jealousy, and murderous ambition. The problem wasn't just the number of potential kings. These illegitimate sons often held positions of real power. A prince might be made the satrap of a wealthy province, giving him his own army, court, and resources. This allowed ambitious sons to build power bases far from the capital, ready to be used the moment the old king died. According to Ctesias, this is exactly what happened. One of Artaxerxes' illegitimate sons, Ochus, was supposedly the satrap of Hyrcania, giving him a powerful position. Another, Sogdianus, held influence in his own region. Their royal blood gave them a claim, but the regional power gave them the means to act on it. This setup was a recurring vulnerability. The dynasty's own history was filled with bloody takeovers. Darius the Great himself hadn't just inherited the throne. He seized it in a coup, an act that was followed by widespread revolts. The precedent was clear. The throne didn't always go to the most legitimate heir, but to the most ruthless one. The system practically encouraged ambitious princes to see their brothers not as family, but as obstacles. And so, as King Artaxerxes I grew old, the stage was set for a tragedy. He had delivered 4 decades of stability, but for all his success, he seems to have done little to fix the fundamental flaw in the system. He had named his only legitimate son, Xerxes II, as his heir, but in a court filled with at least 17 other sons, many of them powerful governors with armies, a designation was really just a suggestion. And it wasn't a suggestion for a peaceful transition. It was an invitation to a fight. Friends, when Artaxerxes I finally died of natural causes in late 425 or early 424 BC, his wife, Queen Damaspia, reportedly passed away on the same day. The facade of unity cracked almost immediately. As the designated heir and the only legitimate son, Xerxes II took the throne in early 423 BC. He was, by all rights, the new king of kings. But his legitimacy was a piece of paper in a world governed by the sword. His reign would last just 45 days. From the start, Xerxes II was in a dangerous position. He held the capital, but his authority wasn't recognized everywhere. He was likely young, inexperienced, and surrounded by officials whose loyalty was for sale. His biggest threats were his own half-brothers, who had been waiting for this moment. The two most prominent were Sogdianus and Ochus. Both saw Xerxes II's legitimacy not as a right, but as an obstacle to their own ambition. Sogdianus struck first. Operating, it's believed, from a power base in the region of Elam, he started pulling strings. He found allies inside the royal court itself, including a powerful nobleman named Pharnaces and a courtier named Menostanes. These were classic political operators, ready to betray one king for the promise of power under a new one. According to Ctesias's dramatic account, the plot came to a head on the 45th day of Xerxes II's reign. After a night of celebration, the king went to his chambers heavily intoxicated. It was the perfect moment. The conspirators slipped into his bedroom where they found him asleep and helpless. There, in the supposed safety of his own palace, the rightful king of kings was murdered in his bed. The assassination wasn't a random act of violence. It was the brutal, almost inevitable outcome of the flawed Achaemenid system. Xerxes II was the legitimate king, but legitimacy without power was meaningless. He hadn't secured the loyalty of the governors or eliminated his rivals before they could strike. His brief, tragic reign is a textbook case of how Persian succession could fail. He inherited a title, but not the absolute power that was supposed to come with it. His story proves that in the Persian court, the most dangerous enemies weren't foreign armies, but the men who shared your father's blood. With Xerxes II dead, Sogdianus had himself proclaimed king. He thought he'd won. But what Sogdianus didn't get was that he hadn't solved the crisis. He'd just hit the accelerator. By killing the legitimate king, he had sent a clear message to every other ambitious brother and governor in the empire. The throne is now open for business. Respected friends, the murder of Xerxes II didn't bring peace. It lit a fuse. The Persian Empire plunged into a full-blown civil war as brother turned against brother. For a time, three different sons of Artaxerxes I all claimed to be king. Xerxes II had briefly held the Persian heartland. His assassin Sogdianus had the support of Elam and now the capital. But far to the east, the third major player, Ochus, the satrap of Hyrcania, refused to bow to a murderer. With the backing of powerful regions like Media, Babylonia, and Egypt, Ochus declared himself the true king, taking the throne named Darius II. The empire was now split into warring factions, each led by a son of the same father. The idea of a single central authority had just vanished. Power now belonged to regional strongmen with their own armies. Sogdianus, the man who started the carnage, quickly found that sitting on a throne you stole is not very comfortable. His reign was filled with paranoia as he tried to secure a crown won by murder. He grew suspicious of the very men who had helped him, a classic problem for any usurper. His attempts to purge the court only pushed more nobles away. Soon key figures began to defect to Darius II's side, including the commander of the cavalry. Sogdianus's brief reign built on betrayal was about to end in betrayal. After just 6 months and 15 days, he was outmaneuvered. Darius II arranged for negotiations, but when Sogdianus arrived, he was seized. His execution was reportedly horrific. He was suffocated in a pit of hot ash, a grim method used for high-ranking traitors to avoid spilling royal blood. The other conspirators who had killed Xerxes II met similar fates. One was executed, and another took his own life. But even with Sogdianus gone, the chaos wasn't over. Another of Darius II's own brothers, Arsites, launched yet another rebellion in a bid for the throne, a revolt that also had to be crushed. Friends, in less than a year, the Persian Empire had seen its long-reigning monarch die, his legitimate son rule for 45 days before being murdered, a usurper reign for 6 months before his own gruesome execution, and another brother's failed rebellion. The whirlwind of violence proved that the Achaemenid system of succession could be a self-destruct mechanism. While the dynasty also had long, stable reigns, this crisis showed how it could become a machine that consumed its own princes and broadcast its weakness to the world. Darius II had finally won, but the damage was done. The precedent of fratricide and civil war had been violently reinforced, and it would haunt the Achaemenid dynasty for the rest of its existence. Friends, the story of Xerxes II, the 45-day king, is basically the story of the Achaemenid Empire in a nutshell. His tragic reign and the bloody chaos that followed weren't an anomaly. They were the violent result of a rot that had been festering for generations. The empire's succession process, a volatile mix of polygamy, palace intrigue, and powerful regional governors, was its Achilles' heel. While strong kings like Cyrus or Darius I could hold the system together, the death of a monarch could unleash a mad scramble for power that threatened to tear the empire apart. The crisis of 423 BC was a critical moment. It shattered a long period of relative stability and reinforced a dark pattern for the final century of Achaemenid rule. The cycle of assassination and family betrayal became deeply embedded in the political culture. Decades later, as later Greek sources like Diodorus Siculus tell it, Artaxerxes III would take the throne by eliminating his own relatives, only to be poisoned by his top general, Bagoas. In a grim echo of the past, Bagoas then poisoned Artaxerxes III's successor before being forced to drink poison himself. The lesson of 423 BC was never truly learned. Internal division was a far greater threat than any foreign enemy. So, what's the legacy of this short, violent chapter? It shows that an empire's strength isn't just about the size of its territory or its armies. It's also measured by its ability to peacefully transfer power. The Achaemenid Empire, for all its administrative brilliance, often failed this crucial test. The constant infighting weakened the throne, drained the treasury, and encouraged disloyalty among its governors. When Alexander the Great launched his invasion around 90 years later, he wasn't facing a united Persian monolith. He was pushing against a structure that had been periodically weakened by this exact kind of internal strife. The regional satraps he met were often more concerned with their own survival than with the fate of the King of Kings, a behavior forged in crises just like this one. Alexander's military genius is undeniable, but he was also kicking at a door that was already rotting from the inside. The fall of the Persian Empire wasn't a sudden collapse, but a long decay. The story of Xerxes II is a haunting reminder that the greatest empires often carry the blueprint for their own destruction. His 45-day reign is a testament to a fatal flaw in the DNA of the Achaemenid dynasty, a flaw that ensured the empire's most dangerous enemies would always come from inside the palace gates. It's a timeless lesson. No matter how mighty an empire seems, it can't survive for long when it's at war with itself. Friends, thank you for sticking with us on this journey into the heart of the Persian succession crisis. I am Czar. If you found this as fascinating as we did, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you think about the Achaemenid Empire or suggest a future topic. And if you'd like to help us keep bringing these stories to life, consider checking out our Patreon.